All right, this is my Britney Spears debut for everybody in this mic. So all I ask today is that we are being live streamed out to Hannah. So if you can't hear me, don't give me the thumbs down because that just really wrecks my ego. I'd rather you do some sort of dance move so it looks like we're having fun while we're learning about orientation. So just let me know if you can't hear me at all. I am a very loud person. I'm usually told I'm too loud, so hopefully that works out today. I'm going to introduce myself. I'm from Fort Macleod, originally from Calgary, Alberta. So I ventured off in looking to become a teacher, and that's why I kind of also ventured off into public speaking, and I'm really excited. This was one of my professional goals, not only for myself, but with my companies to go out and talk about what works for us, and then also hear about the stressors and successes for other companies and work together as a collaborative community and what we can do and change. And yes, we want to be transparent and open today. So feel free to, in your smaller breakout groups, to have those discussions. And I really encourage, there's no right or wrong answers today. There's only progress for us. So this is a great networking tool. When I first came out of university, I did not know anybody in the community. And now I'm very lucky to know a lot of people within Chamber of Commerce, and especially in Fort Macleod, Claresholm, Pincher Creek, you name it. That's how I branched off and how I feel comfortable in my role. So please today, I encourage you to have conversations, and we all are here to learn by the sounds of it. So that's awesome. So we are going to look at onboarding, orientation, and ongoing engagement, the 3 O's today. And I am going to make them interesting. I did listen to some pump up jams. I was telling everybody it can be very exciting, but it's also how to look differently for your company. So we're all in different industries, seasonality. Some of us have stressors of making people engaged. And so we'll be looking at all those factors today. A little bit about the companies I work for. So I originally worked in Lethbridge, and my spouse and I purchased our home in Fort Macleod, and I luckily landed with an awesome opportunity and one of my dream jobs. So I work for a construction manufacturing industry. Structural truss and form steel are on 12th Street in Fort Macleod, and if you haven't been in Fort Macleod recently, I highly recommend just taking a drive down, go and checking out the coffee shops, the bake shops, you name it. We have expanded amazing over the last 2 years. So I was lucky enough to go into an industry that I had no knowledge about structural truss and form steel. The longest term employee that works with structural truss has just celebrated his 38-year anniversary. Our youngest employee into the company has been there since January 3rd. So there you go. We are constantly onboarding. We've also expanded. We've increased our facilities, and we are actually branching off into Lethbridge. So we'll be in Lethbridge at these events, and we'll have an awesome team in and around this area. So I'm sure you'll see us at the Chamber of Commerce events. But at Structural Trust, we have team members that work all over, from design, sales, at our front office staff, to team members working on our production floor. So they're working on our saws, they're working in logistics, on our trucks. We have a whackload of different job descriptions, and it's really hard to turn our brains on into a different setting when you're recruiting for office, to then truck driver, to then on the shop floor, but it happens. And so we are having constant promotion with leadership roles. So I'm always recruiting, and it keeps me excited. So this is why I'm really excited to be here today. But be and all, Structural Truss, we create quality manufacturing for roof and floor trusses. Right now we're building some sheds, so we kind of branch off with all our products. And then right across the street, where I run across and get all my cardio on my Fitbit, is Form Steel, and we make quality roofing, siding, cladding, you name it, basically a full building envelope solution. So we work together, we ship all our products together, and we serve Western Canada. So if you can't tell, I really enjoy my job, and I'm really pumped up, but I want people to also enjoy their job when they're coming in. And I want to really reiterate that today, not only with our onboarding processes, but continue with our orientation and our employee engagement. I want people to love the job as much as I love the job. So that is why I'm here today. A lot of the time, a lot of people ask me, well, can you give me some advice? So this is awesome today that there's so many people here. Again, have those discussions in your smaller groups, and we will have breakout sessions after a few slides. So please discuss amongst yourselves, give each other your information so you can connect after this as well. All right, so already Agatha has asked, what do you want to gain from today's session? We obviously want to learn. We want to maybe look at the gaps and bridge that with some knowledge that's at our tables. But I am going to give you some actual processes and procedures that you can implement into your teams. Some of us, I've just been listening around the tables. We're confined by budgets, which I get. I'm also confined by budgets in certain areas. So we will work together at giving some awesome implementation items that we can then take back to our team. So a lot of us are within human resources. So take this back to your team today and really utilize how you're going to strategically talk about it, not just what I'm saying here today. Maybe you're going to broadcast this video later and give an info session to your team as well. So these are just smaller tips, but we've gone around and we know what we are wanting to gain from today's session. So this is my quote that I start when I first went into human resources, and now I have, my boss usually says this quote. It's also on my door in both of my offices at Structural Trust and Forma Steel. And that's train people well enough so they can leave, treat them well enough so they don't want to. And I truly believe that. If you are giving all the resources and skills to the team members that are onboarding, they will feel more effective and productive in their roles. But as well, you're going to treat them well enough. Don't drop that ball. So ongoing engagement so that they want to stay within your company or maybe your organization. So first, our session objectives. So today we're going to go over onboarding basics. So this is usually defined within 120 days of onboarding that's usually the average within employment. So we'll be looking at new hires in our organizations and the bigger total kind of compensation with onboarding. Then we'll go into orientation programs. So this is going to be the bigger bulk of my presentation today. We're all from different industries, seasonality, healthcare, whatever it may be. These working environments, we also have different roles and responsibilities. So this will be a bigger picture on how we can have more effective orientation programs. And I won't narrow in on my specific industry because I know it won't respond to everybody here today. So what we will gain from this section is to apply those processes into our now or non-existent orientation programs, because a lot of people don't have an orientation program still. So it's kind of alarming, and we'll go over that. Next, we'll go over a case study. So the case study that I'm looking at today, they interviewed human resource professionals, and it was based off engagement, who should be involved in engagement, and as well who's disengaged and why they may be disengaged. So we'll have a breakout session after that case study and look at the gaps within our own orientation and onboarding programs, and that will really help us complement back when we go back to work and deliver this information. Lastly, increasing engagement. So for instance, today I was up at the crack of dawn at 5 o'clock. Well, that's my crack of dawn. And I went in, and my biggest worry today was not coming here and talking, but to ensure that I had donuts on the table for one of our guys' birthdays. So I made sure that I was going in there and I was putting it all over our screens that it was his birthday. That's ongoing engagement. And I'm going to be talking about how you can increase that if it's non-existent, or maybe how you can apply your certain practices and look at different generations. And I'll be talking as well about the generations that are onboarding into the workforce by 2020, which is very scary. So we'll be talking about that today. So remember, we're trying to strive for positive progress, not perfection. You will hear some awesome processes today from both myself and Landis, and it's not expected that you're going to walk out these doors and go, I can do that tomorrow, because again, we're limited by budgets. We don't all have the time in our days to just start implementing all these practices, but start identifying champions of your program. So maybe that's yourself that you can then take back to work and discuss. Before I start, you're also going to hear that I talk about team members. And I really want you to think of that word. When I say team members, at Structural Trust and Forma Steel, we don't use the word staff, coworker. What other kind of words that am I thinking about? Basically staff, coworkers, employee. We don't use those words. It's kind of like our swear jar at Structural Trust and Forma Steel. Within our management team, even if I'm saying, oh, well, this employee, they'll go, hey, employee, $1. To put it in the jar. We don't actually have a physical jar, but we have eliminated those words out of a lot of our practices. And I know in human resources, we still need them in our procedures and our documents, but try to eliminate those words in your everyday vocabulary with your team. So when I talk today, team member can be anybody from upper general management, our shareholders, to a person walking in day one with 0 skills and experience, and they're just looking to learn. Anybody is part of our team. And when I looked into that last year, I was having a conversation with my spouse because I'm a nerd and talk about human resources with everybody. Also, my best friend in Calgary is in human resources, so I really can't get away from it. But we were talking, and I said staff and employee, and he turns to me and he goes, you just sound so demeaning when you're talking that way. You sound above everybody when you're talking about certain situations. So I brought that back to our management team, and now we've eliminated that. So now just really think about how you're talking to a person, especially the millennial group that's coming in. You're going to hear me stressing about millennial group. But team members, they've been engaged in teamwork their whole life. So having that kind of conversation where we're a part of a team, we succeed together, we rise together, we fail together, that will create a lasting impression, especially with your ongoing engagement practices. So today, Really think about that. That's my challenge for you, to go back to work and start using that vocabulary in your teams. It's really hard, and you're going to start to notice. Yes. Yes. So I'm going to paraphrase what you say back, Rose, so that our live stream can hear. So your company that you prior to work for used to say my staff. Any employer would say my staff. Yeah, and you can hear how demeaning it is. Even when we're saying it in our room today, saying my staff, our staff, or employee, you're not a number. And we have to remember that we're getting into generations that are still very individualized. They want to feel that experience. They don't want to just be another onboarding person in a group of 17 and think, oh, well, 6 of these guys are going to be gone next week because they don't really like it. Taking that away, start using the word team member and just hearing how it sounds in your mind. And even when I'm giving discussions and I'm having more solution-based conversations with people, using the word team member goes a long way. So thank you, Rose. I really appreciate when you said that. And just, yeah, think about when you're talking to people and give that feedback to them, that kind of terminology can be demeaning in certain settings. So think about that today. That was my fun little challenge for you. But let's get started. So what is onboarding? Who here, by a raise of hands or just a nod of the head, understands what onboarding is? Woohoo! We got one hand. Nice. Well, onboarding is a strategic system designed to decrease staff turnover by increasing staff engagement. I'll say that again so you can know this. Designed to decrease staff turnover by increasing staff engagement. Commonly, though, it is confused with orientation. Half the time I hear, oh, yeah, we have an orientation program. And I go, okay, so how long is your onboarding program? Do you actually have a process for onboarding? No, well, we have an orientation program. It's an hour. They come in on a Monday and it's an hour. No. You're not seeing the bigger picture. So it is commonly confused with orientation, but onboarding is part of the bigger picture. Orientation is just one of the first steps of onboarding, and we'll get into that. But onboarding is a much larger set of activities which ramp people up to get to that full capacity. So at Structural Trust and Formis Steel, in your pamphlets today, I'm not too sure if Farah gave it to you, but in our pamphlets, we have a 4 to 6 week onboarding program. And how we define that and how we measure it is efficiency levels. So say, I'm going to use some words today, or some names today. Bob and Joe walk in to Structural Trust and Formis Steel. We can gauge that they are going to be at full production levels by 6 weeks. And sometimes we have to extend that, and we understand that skill levels are not all the same, not one size fits all. But we usually gauge and say, we need to have those measurable marks for you for the onboarding process to be at 6 weeks. And if at 6 weeks they're not at the level, we have conversations. So we'll be learning about that today as well. But long story short, follow up with our onboarding program is made on a weekly basis and more one-on-ones. And we'll be learning about that today as well. The process of onboarding can involve both formal and on-the-job learning. So how many of us have buddy system learning in our current programs? They're linked beside somebody or they're job shadowing. One hand. A few more hands? Awesome. So we have a buddy system training. And a lot of people are going, no, you want to eliminate that. You want them to be independent. It still is a very effective tool, buddy system training, job shadowing. You're going to be linked with a mentor. So we're also going to learn about that today. But during onboarding, this is when our expectations are set. So you can't come to work with denim for Monday to Thursday, but on Friday you can. That's an expectation that they're going to learn within the onboarding program. They also understand behavior during this program. And this is where you want to set those rules and regulations and have those conversations, is during an onboarding program. So today, I'm going to introduce you to a very mean boss, mean character, and I'm hoping our technology works on our end. So the next slide here, is anybody familiar with The Devil Wears Prada? Yeah, I'm a movie buff, so you're going to hear a lot of pop culture references, and I will try to reference them back if you don't watch movies. But I love The Devil Wears Prada, and it's really hard to find a movie with a horrible boss that is appropriate content nowadays. Everything has swear words, so Miranda's not that bad. But Miranda, Meryl Streep, who you see here today with the fabulous glasses, she is the head honcho of a fashion industry company. And you're also going to see Anne Hathaway. So if you're not familiar with Anne Hathaway, she's the second lady in this scene. It is one of her first days on the job. So she's being onboarded. This is the onboarding program for her. And I really want you to look at 3 things today on your slides and what you're writing down. What body language we see during the video, what kind of company culture we now inherit after 2.5 minutes, and what might a new hire respond to within this working environment. And I'll tell you right now, we'll have some good discussion. So let's hope that this works on our end, and we'll get started. It's only 2.5 minutes. We're going to watch on maybe YouTube if we have to log in. Perfect. Okay. Oh, I'm just going to pause it here. And we're just on an excuse us in Hannah. We're just going to get this going. And thank you to the staff here that helped, team members that helped here. Do we have a speaker that we can turn up here at? Okay, perfect. So just give us a 2-minute kind of lenience here. So we're going to get into this, but the clip at home, or if you want to use this back at your work, is called Gird Your Loins by The Devil Wears Prada. So this girl is the mentor within the group. We're just going to get the volume going, and there's only 2 clips in my whole presentation, so we'll be okay. Okay, so this one's plugged in right here into this computer. Yeah. Okay. These lovely ladies who work here, this awesome team, are going to help us. Okay, perfect. Give us 2 minutes. Talk amongst your groups. If you don't know The Devil Wears Prada, let your team know about what The Devil Wears Prada, the storyline is. We'll get this going. Okay. Let's get this going. Oh, yeah. We're moving and grooving. We're good. We're good. Yeah, we're good. Awesome. Look at that. When minds come together, we can get things going. Okay, so we're arriving. This is Miranda in her beautiful vehicle that she has a driver, and I wish I had the money to have a driver, but here we go. So that's one of my favorite scenes because Meryl Streep, we end up loving her throughout the movie, but I want you in your smaller breakout groups to talk about that scene. We had some giggles, but this is actually what happens for people when they're walking in. This is how I felt on my very first chaotic day with structural trust and forma steel, and I did get permission from my boss today to talk about that day. But in your groups, I want you to talk about those 3 items. So what kind of body language you saw in that 2.5-minute clip? What kind of company culture did we now inherit? And how might a new hire respond? So amongst your groups, we have had discussion. Talk for 2 minutes about those 3 items. So I'll let you guys break out. Awesome. Okay, I'm going to wrap up our conversations. So I went around the room. From those 3 questions of identifying body language and seeing the company culture and how Annie might feel. So we did see her in the scene just going, what's the heck's happening over here? But from our groups, what were kind of some key indicators that we took away from that video around the room? And there's no wrong answers today. You're not going to get a buzzer. From this table, what did we identify as some of the key indicators from that scene? Stressful, definitely. And just that fear-mongering, right? And, oh, Miranda should be feared, and everybody is on their tippy toes and should be very afraid of this woman, right? Another thing is the company culture. So maybe she onboarded and thought that it was going to be a great environment. She was going to be busy, and it's going to be a challenge for her. But in actuality, that culture is very scary, and a lot of people do experience this. This is reality for a lot of people, and we need to realize that Annie in this clip is our new team member walking in on day 1. They're scared, they're anxious, and they are responding to all of that environment that they're experiencing. And it can be very chaotic when there's people around you running around, or they're not giving you that time of day to maybe introduce themselves. So we'll be looking at that, and I think it's really good that we could spark a little discussion from this very dramatic scene of Meryl Streep. So I'm going to jump right into it. We've gone over the 3 questions. Next is, so there was a study done by a Wynn Hearst group, and I'm one of those nerds, again, who likes to listen to podcasts while I'm walking my dog and figure out why Fortune 500 groups are very successful and why everybody wants to go work for them. So the Wynn Hearst group, they did a study over 5 different disciplines, and they used the word assimilation of new hires, another word I don't like using. I'm not trying to assimilate you. You can leave at any point in time. You're not confined here. But new hires, and they found out some very staggering information. So number 1, 22% of new employee turnover occurs in the first 45 days of employment. Would you agree to that? Is that what you're experiencing right now? A few of you saying no, a few of you are going. So that it was a very staggering statistic. This is a very interesting one. 4% never return on the first day of work. I have a few people looking at each other going, ugh. I've been very fortunate enough to not experience a walkout on my first day, but it's happened, and we need to discuss that within our teams. If that's happening, there's something wrong with our circle process when it comes to onboarding. Something went wrong. There was a break in the chain. So that's very interesting. And I've had it happen to people where they give me a call and they go, I just did orientation for 6 hours and they didn't come back on Tuesday. And that can really defeat not only your morale, but your whole team's morale, right? In the first 6 months, new employees make their decision whether or not to stay. Would you agree to this? In the first 6 months, you kind of read those attitudes. There you go. Lastly, the cost of losing an employee in the first year is 1.5 of 3 times their annual salary. It's a big number, and I was presenting this to a few other human resource professionals, and they didn't disagree. That's very true. It costs a lot, not only for our turnover, but our morale and the environment that we're then reproducing out into, maybe it's our shop floors and our offices. So from this information, they looked at successes, and what really worked for a lot of people was focusing on career development in supporting retention. So people like to know that there was some sort of development within their role. Specifically, they found that companies that paired new hires with mentors, they had quarterly meetings, attended leadership conferences, so kind of like we're at today, had learning and development plans, and rotational assignments were the most successful at retaining people. So that was very interesting to me, and I definitely believe that having a mentorship within your own onboarding process will make you very successful. I most definitely can. So we've just been asked to repeat that. So the ones that were successful with the companies, they were paired with a mentor, and we'll define who a mentor would be within our onboarding process. They had quarterly meetings. So they were sitting down and actually having a meeting every quarter. They weren't waiting every 3, 6, 12 months. They were meeting every quarter. They were attending leadership conferences or development days like we have here today. They had learning and development plans. And they also had rotational assignments. So that would mean like going to another department and learning about something. So maybe that's within food and beverage industry, and you have servers, and you want them to understand why it's stressful for the kitchen team. So maybe you want to place them with a kitchen team member when you're a little quieter, so they can understand the full beverage. And I worked in food and beverage, so I understand how chaotic it can be some days. But most importantly, employees who did experience an onboarding program were 58% more likely to stay within a company for 3 years. So those who actually had an onboarding program were able to retain those team members for 3 years in those companies. And that was very interesting to me. So this guy looks a little stressed out, but why does onboarding matter to us? Well, first off, it's going to lower our turnover rates, and it's going to save your sanity as a human resource or hiring manager. It's going to increase productivity. Engaged employees are productive employees. They enjoy their job when they're engaged. Improved employee morale. When people stay, you're creating that working environment where everybody feels welcome and they can move forward. They're not constantly retraining and retraining and retraining. You're also going to have lower recruiting and training costs, which is great for our budgets. You're going to have fewer grievances. So I used to work within a unionized environment, and I noticed the more grievances we had were within new team members within the first 6 months. So you want to retain those individuals within a unionized environment. Fewer workplace injuries. So my other hat that I hold at Structural Trust and Forma is the safety officer and auditor. So I notice that usually within the first 6 months, that's when people are cutting their hands, their slip, trips, falls, they're a mess. And it's reality. When you're onboarding brand new team members, they're more likely and they see higher frequencies of hazards. So you're going to reduce the time that you have to call WCB. And I'm sure a lot of us would love that. So, and the paperwork, we don't want that. Next is increased facilitation of learning. So they're going to actually be engaged in the learning aspect. And as well, it is important to us because it's going to reduce anxiety for our new employees. When they know what they're expected in their onboarding and orientation program, they're going to succeed. When you come in day one and you have no idea what's happening, that's when you're more likely to fail. So how can organizations improve their onboarding process? A lot of the time I get asked, well, what is the miracle? And it's going to be different for every single person. Move towards digital. How many of us have an onboarding process that is digital right now? So, or you have a software program that's allowing you to do that. Guess what? I don't either. And a lot of the time people go, really? You don't have a software program? We don't need it, but we can adapt and create our onboarding process to become digital. So avoid that time that you're having that unnecessary pre-onboarding paperwork. So maybe that's your federal and provincial tax forms. Maybe that's the employee form. Try to move digital, have a very uniform system that is sent out to every single person. And we will see that today. And this is on your slides to take back the tools that I am going to provide to you. Next is you could actually ping the important people during that digital process. So you could include or BCC the personnel, the payroll, the benefits, the IT, whoever it may be to set that person up for success. Next is it's an educational component. So update your technical skills, your courses and mandatory safety courses. And you're noticing this a lot more within oil and gas industries, within certain companies like construction, that you want to make sure that that person is onboarded and they're ready to go on day one and they feel confident that you're not waiting, hey, you're going to get that forklift in 3 weeks from now. that person is going to hold on to that promise. And if they don't get into that class or they're not able to go for that training, it's a letdown. So you can improve your onboarding process by having an educational component. Next is connect through social media. This is huge. Don't drop the ball, but let them know about your professional kind of LinkedIn. So if it's LinkedIn, if it's Facebook, if it's Twitter, we've just gotten Twitter at Forma Steel, so follow us there. But we want people to be engaged, and that is reality, that people want to be branded to a company. They want to tell people, like, this is what's on our Facebook, and they'll start sharing. So invite them to connect through social media. And another kind of aspect that I tell people is LinkedIn is a great tool, and if you don't have it, start looking at it as a tool. If a person has LinkedIn, you can connect. I could connect with Landis before today, so I already knew kind of her background. LinkedIn is a very powerful tool, and I tell people and our team members, connect with that person on LinkedIn before they get in and send them a welcome message. It sets that precedence right off the bat. Next is socialization. So how many times do we hire a person coming in, and it's December, so I've had this situation happen. We hired them in December, and they're onboarding in the second week of January, and we don't talk to them until January. And it is reality for a lot of people. You want to keep up with your socialization practices, so I will send out an email around Christmas time wishing them a happy holidays. I'll send another email in the new year asking if they have any other questions onboarding, because when we stew and we wait for that time prior to starting with the company, the questions build up with those new team members. Lastly, follow up with those promises, and this is something that's so important in your onboarding process. So you've gone through the full hiring practice, and you've told them during the interview that and I always follow back on training. You're going to go for training in your first month. If you do not follow up with those training and those promises, you better believe that that person's going to hold on to that. So make sure you're following up with your promises. If you've told them a certain, maybe it's a workstation or they want a certain mouse or keyboard, whatever it may be, write that down on a piece of paper and make sure you're handling it right away before they're onboarding. Not the day of, not the day after they've onboarded, but before they're even there. So why move digital? This is always a question. And how many people in this room, by kind of a raise of hands or not, how many have a digital onboarding process where everything's sent maybe via email or it's couriered? I don't know. Yep. So a lot of people are already digital, but it is reality that a lot of people aren't digital. And we have to look at not only the generation that's coming and enforcing into the workforce, they're constantly addicted to their phones, and you better be ready when Generation 2020 comes in, because they are going to be full stream digital, and they are on average looking at 5 screens right now. So just be prepared as a recruiter and understand that our onboarding process needs to be very digital, easy. You can navigate around. So first and foremost, it saves time and money when you move digital. It allows a team member to sign and return a contract within a matter of minutes. We're no longer telling a person to come in and sign that contract. And you're saving on the paper. That's usually a big thing. You don't have to print out everything. Next is safe and secure. So digital onboarding, it stores everything digitally. So the employee's information is accessible on their end and on yours. It creates a trail when you go digital. So when everything is handled online, you can quickly identify those documents if they've maybe missed signing that quarter document that everybody needs to in the organization. And again, you don't need the software. You can set reminders for yourself, but keep it digital so that everybody has that information and it's obtainable. Next, it can be a great training tool. So you can also include within these like health and safety documents. You can have training videos. So we've just this past year at Structural Trust and Forma Steel moved to a digital onboarding process for training. So before they even walk in day one, they are looking at videos, they are understanding what they are expected, and we have a full training program where they know where they're going to work, they're seeing team members' faces, but it's available to them, and they can access it. And lastly, it sets a great impression of your business. A digital onboarding process, it tells people that you're ready for the future. And if you don't have it, I highly encourage that you talk with your key stakeholders and really focus, not even if it's again, software is very expensive out there for human resources, but how you can move to eliminating the paperwork and creating a digital platform. So this is one of my favorite tools. I love, again, looking at what is successful for other companies. So LinkedIn, this is an open platform that they allowed within human resources to share amongst everyone. So LinkedIn has a new hire orientation, basically an email that they send out. And this says, dear first name, this is your first day. And this is your new hire orientation. You're going to have the dates and times. So you're already setting the precedence of when they need to arrive, where they're going to go, who they're going to be meeting. That is extremely important. Your brand new team member needs to know the name of the person because they will hold on to that. They'll walk in and go, I need to meet with James. And that's what I did. Next is a schedule. So like we have today, and you understand that I'll be done at 10:30, a schedule is very important. Maybe they want to go for lunch on their first day. Maybe they want to know that they can have a phone call because they'll have a coffee break with somebody. Set a schedule. So here they talk about benefits. They go and make sure they're meeting. So in our onboarding process at Structural Trust and Forma Steel, they meet with me. They meet with people out on the shop floors, and then they meet with the key stakeholders, usually like a manager, a supervisor, and then a controller to get set up on benefits and payroll. Lastly, you can also brand yourself. So this is a kind of cool initiative that LinkedIn has. Put a hashtag on it. So they want people to start using hashtags like LinkedIn or hashtag structural trust or hashtag Forma Steel. And I want to encourage people to connect with us on those social media platforms. And most important, and I really stress this, what to bring on day one. I walked in with some fake succulent plants. I did not know what to expect on my day one. I knew I wanted to decorate my new office, and that was about it. So I told my boss, it's really important to let people know what they need to bring. So in our area, it's safety sensitive. They need to come in with steel toes. They need to walk in with a safety high-vis vest. If they don't have that, I can provide that to you. I let them know very clear and very transparent that this is what you need to succeed within your first day. And that's very important. Lastly, and I encourage this, and LinkedIn doesn't do this, one of the top questions I get when onboarding a brand new team member is, where do I park? So many people park in customer parking, and it's embarrassing when you have to go and tell a brand new person, you're parked in customer parking, you're gonna need to move. That can already set a person back 10 steps. So let them know where they need to park. So I say, you're gonna park on the west end of our building, I'll meet you at the front door at 8 a.m. And I better believe that if they're coming in at 8 a.m., I'm standing there at 7:50 ready to welcome them. That is one of my kind of tools that I utilize, and I tell people that they're coming. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Gloria and Lisa. I got permission today to use these names and these lovely individuals that work for our teams. Gloria has been with our company for over 29 years at Structural Trust and Forma Steel. She's seen it all. When I onboarded people coming into our teams, I was meeting them at the front, and she was going, who are you? I didn't even know it was day one for you. And that stressed her out. It stressed her position out. So now, when anybody's being onboarding, I send her a reminder. I let it pop up on her email 20 minutes before they're meant to arrive. And I'll also send a welcome email to everybody in our offices that we have a brand new team member. Maybe they work somewhere for 50 years or something, and I want to let them know about that awesome accomplishment. But I'm already personalizing that individual that's going to be welcomed into the team, and it creates it a lot easier for people to then generate conversations to welcome them a lot easier. And so my first day at Structural Trust and Forma Steel was nothing like this. And I'm not afraid to talk about this. And my boss goes, only talk about the good stuff, okay? But my orientation process, I was welcomed into my office. I met Gloria at the front, and she told me to have a seat and that my boss would be right with me. And then I was kind of taken over to the other side of the office, and I was introduced to people. And they had to walk up to me to be introduced. So they walked up to me, and my boss was looking at his watch going, oh, a little late today. He was just making certain body language when he was looking at his clock. And I internalized that, and I go, I don't want to be ever late because this guy looks at his watch constantly. And I told him, and I gave him this feedback. When people are coming up to you to be introduced, it's kind of that hierarchy power where I'm walking over to this person and I better introduce myself or else I don't know what might happen. And I'm in a position where I have to be a non-biased resource to everybody within both Structural Trust and Forma Steel. So now I prepare our team members. I let them know when people are coming. I let them know who's being onboarded. And when they're being introduced, we walk up to them. We don't have them walk up to us. It's just that body language that really sets the tone. So next, orientation. Onboarding, bigger picture. Remember, our onboarding process is 6 weeks. So when that person walks in, say they're in an administration role, how long is it going to take them that you could leave and go on a week vacation to Honolulu? That's when they're onboarded, when you feel comfortable and that their productivity levels are at the top. That is how I define looking at your onboarding programs. How long does it take for you to walk away from them and they can be trusted? And it's true. So orientation, this is a first day experience. We're going to move away from the boring, stale programs that you probably have right now, and that's what I walked into as well. We used to show a video from the 80s, and I couldn't get it to work on our speakers. And if I can't get something to work and I didn't feel confident in our orientation programs, the people that were sitting around the room didn't feel confident in me either. So I've changed my orientation program, and I'm constantly changing our orientation program. It should not be something that you're just visiting once every 3 years. Review your orientation program, and if you're having high turnover rates, have those conversations when you're having your exit interview. What did you like or dislike about orientation? Was it helpful? What was boring? what made you snooze in the back and you didn't really care about what you were learning. So orientation programs should be fun and zany and keep them energetic, and also keep the information to what you need to get done in the first day. Don't bombard them with everything in the first day. There's already so much information that they're going to be intaking within the first 6 months that they don't need to know every aspect of every part of the business within day one. Usually expect that within the week. Start spreading out your kind of procedures and your mentality of what you're wanting to get across. So setting your new team member up for success on day one will encourage this behavior in the coming months. If you're not prepared, they're probably not going to be prepared in the coming 3 months. So your key stakeholders, the most effective orientation programs involve everybody basically. So if it's only involving you right now, and if you're the only one doing all of the hiring to then orientation and then onboarding, start including those key stakeholders. I would encourage hiring managers, supervisors, coworkers, and your human resources. Together, it'll show that you're prepared and that you all are very transparent with the company or your organization. So we're going to jump right into managers and supervisors. Again, team members. Supervisors and managers, they play a critical role not only in career development, but they'll also assist in succession planning for that new person walking in. So clarify the real details. Your managers and supervisors should know what this person is expected in their first week, month, quarter, and year. They need to lay it out. They need to know what that person needs to achieve in that time frame. If you have a team member who isn't prepared with these answers, you need to sit down with that manager and say, you need to know what's clearly expected of this person. Nothing worse than sitting down with a manager or supervisor and going, well, what do you want me to do? And they go, I don't know. You're just hired into the team. So talk with your managers and let them know revisit your job descriptions. Have meetings with your managers. Tell them that you want them to understand the expectations within those roles and responsibilities. And what's realistic? What's essential? These are going to be questions, and that I encourage your managers to sit down and have conversations with your brand new team members. So what's a stretch? Like you're not expecting them to drive to Calgary to get some new equipment. You're expected that they want to meet new clients. It's all dependent on your industries, but set those realistic expectations. So you can coach your supervisors and managers by setting up measurable items. This is very important. Supervisors and managers should know how to measure items, and this is very easy for people to then talk to their supervisors. So specific amount of goals or tasks to complete within the 1 week. So maybe in 1 week you want them to know 3 different clients. Meet with X amount of clients in your 1 month. And again, I'm kind of going default into sales, but understand certain lumber grade qualities. So at Structural Truss and Forma Steel, we have a timeline for the 4 to 6 weeks. Now we make it very personable on our shop floors. I've set up an Excel spreadsheet for weeks 1 to 4, and this may be in your packages, but if not, yes, it is. So this is very basic. This is for our building team members. So from weeks 1 to 4, and if we need to extend it, it'll go into week 6. But we have a mentor that has this checklist. This is basically a checklist for them so they ensure what they need to talk about. So they're going to sit down with a brand new team member on a Friday, and they're going to discuss all the fire safety rules. They're going to understand safety devices, knowledge of lumber types, the tools, the reading lasers. Yes, we have lasers. Plate placement, banding, cleaning procedures, and lumber placement. So week 1 is just kind of getting associated with that environment. And this is provided to a brand new team member walking in on day 1. So they're not kind of surprised on Friday when they're having a report card session. And I'm very lucky that our training program is actually delivered by a retired teacher. So he sits down on every Friday with those team members and has these conversations, and he's providing the feedback. So when it's poor or excellent, he's making sure that he's telling that person why it's poor and why it needs to increase. So you're not doing well with plate placement. So that means that they're putting the plates together on the truss and it's not going good. He's telling them how they can succeed, and he'll put that in the remarks. And then he reminds himself on the following week, on week 2, that that person wasn't at that level in week 1, and we need to revisit that. So these are just small checklists that I've created and I've given to team members so that they can coach and mentor people in the right setting. And it's been great. People really look forward to report card time. They really appreciate the one-on-one sessions, and it keeps them engaged. And we'll get into employee engagement as well. So managers and supervisors are given the tools. They understand what's realistic and what specific measurable items that a person needs to succeed. So take these, again, it's a small checklist that I've created, and this is off of, again, so best boss ever checklist. This is something that I've implemented as of 2018. This is a best boss checklist. So the other week, it was our first week for our brand new driver. He's amazing, and he came in, but we don't see that class 1 driver because he's in Saskatchewan, then he's in Fort St. John, then he's at Integrity Yard in Okotoks. I never see him. He's like a passing ship in the night. So that's really hard for me. How do I keep him engaged? How do I know he's engaged if he's behind a vehicle and he's not really getting the company culture? So I prepared my boss, James, to sit down and have a checklist in advance. So he's going to set them up for success. He's going to make sure that the roles and responsibilities are reviewed. He's going to discuss the working styles and his expectations for that person. He's also going to review performance goals. He's going to schedule meetings, so that person is now going to meet with other team members. He's going to schedule more one-on-ones, and he's going to create a warm, welcome environment. So he's going to create an agenda if he needs to address with that person. He's going to make lunch plans. So the other day I walked in past his office and I heard him go, "Hey, yeah, make sure before you go on Monday, we have a coffee. I want to talk and see how you're doing." And that created that environment that we care. And we genuinely do care at Structural Trust and Forma Steel. During that time as well, with the checklist, I made sure that that person had a brand new t-shirt. I also made sure that person had a brand new high-vis jacket. Again, within our budget, we can't always hand those items out, but I want to make sure that person feels welcome. And I also sent out a welcome email, including my boss and all of the team members to let them know we had a brand new driver and to welcome and extend that warm welcome within the first week. And I basically tell people, step out of your comfort zone. Even if you don't want to have a relationship with that person outside of work, make that lasting relationship at work. It'll make your life easier. And if you ever have a question again, they'll feel confident coming and talking to you. Show investment. So ensure a mentor has been provided. So I have a brand new driver and I have to think, how can I create a mentorship? I have a head trucker over at Structural Trust, and I made sure, and I went and talked to him and I said, I want you to step out of your comfort zone and have a conversation in your first week. Give him a call while he's on the road. Hands-free, but have a conversation with him on the road and ask how his day's going. Ask him how the equipment's running. Is he feeling okay? And we have to create that personable, individualized relationship with people to make it lasting. And it has to be genuine. Yes, we have a checklist, but that's just a guideline for how we can succeed with talking to people. So they made sure that they stepped out of your comfort zone. And they're going to set up measurable goals for the coming months and years. And that was really important for them to do. So that's just a checklist that he follows. Next is coworkers. So who thinks that coworkers, other team members, but coworkers for the premise of this this presentation, who thinks coworkers are important to be involved during the orientation program? Yeah, by raise of hands, it's pretty important. Nothing worse than you're welcoming a brand new person and going, "Hey Bob, this is Joe," and Joe goes, "Oh, I didn't know there was a new guy today," because that's happened, and it doesn't mentally prepare a person to walk in and feel confident in their role. So I make sure that coworkers are there not only as mentors, but they're there to help that person succeed. I'm just going here. So they would create a kind of get to know me sheet. So I have a brand new team member that walked in at Structural Trust. She actually switched industries. So she is brand new into construction. She's a very type A personality, and I love her to death because I love people who know what they want and they need a list and they will get it done and they'll come and check when they're done. So for me, I wanted her to feel confident with the 13 team members that are in our offices. So I did a get to know me sheet. So I had a photo of a person and I told them, everybody, I need a funny kind of quirk about yourself that I'm going to put on this email. So some people like playing Pokemon Go. And I'm like, right, okay, we're going to put Pokemon Go on there. Another person liked to say that they have a brand new puppy and they're up all night puppy training this dog. Another person wanted to say that they're the brand new mayor of Fort Macleod. We have a mayor of Fort Macleod and he's awesome. So I created this fun little zany spreadsheet to let that person know, and that created icebreakers for her. She instantly was able to go and create a conversation with a person. She knew something and it was an icebreaker. It wasn't, "Oh, hi, I'm Bob, I'm Joe, and this is very, very scary for me." So created that relationship already. And I also walk up and introduce those team members. I don't just let them introduce themselves. I make it apparent that my orientation program should be me walking that person over. So do this to avoid the reoccurring walk-ins. So how many times do you feel that within your first week, a new person is walking into your office or coming to ask you recurring questions? And if they are asking those questions and they're going, "Oh, I don't know where the bathrooms are, I don't know where this is," you're missing a point in your onboarding process. Or link them with a mentor. So my idea is to link with somebody that's familiar in the office, maybe around the same age range, so that they feel comfortable to go and have those conversations. So Gloria and Lisa, for instance, I schedule and I address and I follow up with those ladies who are at the front of our offices to ensure that if there's any questions when it comes to administration, to payrolls, whatever it may be, that there's that other person that they can talk to. Don't just be the key stakeholder in your orientation and onboarding programs, because it doesn't work for the long run. Next is human resources. How many people think human resources are pretty important for an orientation and onboarding program? Woohoo! Yeah, we're awesome. We're exactly that. We're a resource to humans. And we're seeing more and more, and you're seeing the articles, and it scares me to death. Automation is going to replace human resources. And I go, no, we aren't. No, we aren't. Don't listen to that. Yes, there's automation out there, but we still need that human factor in our onboarding process. You still need to make that connection with people. So we're strategic champions, and we're a key stakeholder in this process. And you want to make sure people are aware when they're onboarded that they can trust you, but that all the other key stakeholders are there as well. So here's the best boss check-in questions that I give out. So these are questions to ask over coffee. And this is a good kind of checklist to have. If you're not having follow-up questions or you're kind of awkwardly, oh, how's your first week, Joe? Oh, good. Okay, all right. We'll see you around. That is not a check-in. Have more strategic questions for your new hire coming in. So how's it going? How do you feel? What are you enjoying most about this role? Is this what you expected? Has training been helpful? Would you add or change anything to the training program? And that will help your human resources extremely. Has anything surprised you? I've had a few answers to that one. Do you have all the tools and resources that you need? I had a guy the other day go, yeah, you gave me an extra large and I'm a 4XL and I need a 4XL. And I go, okay, so I'm so sorry. So that was something that I had to be in the loop and understand what that person needed. Another thing, do you feel out of the loop about anything? Yeah, I haven't made a connection, or I don't know where this is. So you're answering those questions that they're not very familiar with. Do you feel like you've gotten to know your team members? And that's a good question to ask in the first week. Create that culture, that welcoming environment. Yeah, I don't really know my team members. Now I'm going to make it apparent for the next half hour that I want to go and introduce them maybe to another team member. What is working and not working? Is anything about your role, team, or company still unclear? And how can I be a better manager for you? Remember, not every human is the same. Everybody responds differently. I have a person who shows no emotion at work to another person who is very emotional. And so I need to know and gauge how I'm going to have these conversations. But these are pretty easy follow-up questions to go over. So my boss, he's great. He loves being prepared, and I like preparing our team to feel successful. So he'll ask these questions within the first week. So that's just on the little side of things for human resources. Successful orientation. So components of successful orientation. Orientation checklist. How many of us have a checklist for our orientation program at the moment? Raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. Slowly. So there are some checklists out there. The easiest, and if you're in and around an OH&S environment, I'm a very safety-oriented environment. I need to ensure that certain components are within my checklist. So in your package today, I have an orientation checklist, and it's provided on OH&S government. Again, dependent on your environment and where you work. Just going to go here. But I need to ensure that I'm going over health and safety, hazards, emergency procedures, toxic products, WMIS, evacuation. That is extremely important. If you're at all experiencing a core audit, or you're going to be audited of your environment in the next few years, you want to make sure that this checklist is available, signed off, and documented for a person. So I would like to maybe have the employee's signature at the bottom and ensure I'm going over these items. But you can create checklists that are pertinent to maybe your office, and maybe you're not certified for safety in your office, which is fine, but you want to make sure that those checklists are available and very transparent as well. Effective supervisor and management training, and we are going to link up with that after on how we can prepare those supervisors and managers more effectively. Information available in an accessible format. If anybody at any point in time signs something during our orientation program, I make it available to them. Nothing worse than signing a document and not being able to go back and understand what you've just signed. So make sure those documents are readily available and accessible on both ends. And one-on-one information sessions. Move away from the dreaded, we're going to meet every 2 weeks, we have lunch, what do you want from the Vietnamese restaurant? Move away from those meetings. They're dreaded, and people don't respond when they're sitting in a meeting with 7 people who shouldn't be there. and you're listening to the same old banter and you're not getting the points across and you're not being strategic. So have more one-on-one information sessions. And I encourage our team members, if you have 2 people that report to you, go and have a weekly meeting for half an hour. Get over some of the goals, what we did wrong last week and what we're going to do better this week. Have more one-on-one sessions. Policies and procedures. No matter what, we have to go over policies and procedures because people need to know what is expected of them. How many people in this room still utilize a binder that is full of policies and procedures and say, read this? Does anybody have that in the program? A few people are going, yeah. I'm not afraid to admit that we do have policies and procedures, but I ensure that the ones that are pertinent for that person to succeed within their first week are only addressed during that time. And maybe I need to have another one-on-one. Don't sit down for 3 hours and have those meetings because guess what? They've checked out after the 3rd policy that you've read through. And have these policies available online. Maybe digitalize them. Assign your administrative team to digitalize those procedures. And this is a good way to gauge the certain groups right now that are coming into the workforce. So my friend just started with a bank in Calgary, and I am a social media buff. I love Snapchat. I love LinkedIn. I love Instagram. I love Twitter. And my spouse doesn't love that. I love all these, but these kind of policies and procedures, I could tell very fast how engaged this brand new employee was. So she started with a bank, and she uploaded a Snapchat with a policy and procedure manual the size of King Kong, and goes, what a great first day. So I instantly knew she wasn't engaged because A, she's on Snapchat, and B, she's publishing that she's not engaged on her policies and procedures. She's rather showing people how dreaded it is to read that policies. And that's how a lot of people feel now. So try to digitalize your policies and procedures and create a kind of a movement where you're only tackling those things on more one-on-one. And maybe you're addressing a policy that's pertaining to their certain roles and responsibilities in week 2. An accessible workstation. How many times do you set up a brand new person and IT doesn't have them set up on email? There's no voicemail set up. They don't have a mouse and the keyboard is missing 4 keys. I've had that experience, and I tell people, let's not wait till Friday. Let's not wait till Friday for that person starting on Monday to try to set up this workstation. So how I prep myself, and it's really important, and it is a small cost to you within human resources, a business card goes a long way. So I order, even if I have to pay the $12 rush on Vistaprint, I'm going to do it. There's always a discount card, like discount coupon. I'm very frugal. I know how to find them. So I make sure I get those business cards ordered right away. I make sure that they have a voicemail, that they have a phone, that they have a brand new keyboard and mouse, and that workstation is ready. So if it's a desk that a person has been in for 16 years and there's a brand new team member walking in, it probably has a few dust bunnies. So I make it, we don't have an awesome janitor team that big organizations have. I go in and I clean that desk top to bottom. I wipe it down. I make it seem as new as possible. Fresh, new. There's not old papers and documents roaming around. If that's the kind of a working environment you're trying to portray, that they're just sitting in for somebody, maybe it's a mat leave, a different situation. But try to create a brand new clean workstation for a person. And lastly, again, computer and voicemail access. Nothing worse than being like, I can't get on the internet and I'm going to sit here for 2 hours and twiddle my thumbs until somebody comes and helps me. And that does happen. So make sure this is ready and available. Next, create a goal to crush in the first day or week. This is really important. And a lot of people don't have this in their orientation program. Create a goal. So maybe it's that they have to learn 2 funny facts about team members on the floor. I usually tell them this. You have to go and meet 2 people that live in Lethbridge on the floor. You have to go and meet a person who's from Pincher Creek on the floor. And usually by lunchtime, they're like, who lives in Pincher? Who lives in Pincher? But I want them to have that engaging conversations and step out of their own comfort zones. But create a goal to crush. Maybe it's that they have to reach out to a client. So just create a goal. That's something that we very much lack. So the ultimate new hire checklist. Again, available to you, and you do have these slides on your USBs. I can definitely slow down. I'm like the roadrunner right now. So, and remember, if I need to slow down, don't give me the thumbs up. Let's dance, and then I'll know that I need to slow down. So, the ultimate new hire checklist. Sorry, Hannah, people that I'm broadcasting out to. People to ping. So, you're going to want to make sure the important people are involved in your orientation process. So, that's going to be personnel, payroll, benefits, and IT department. If you don't have these IT departments, I don't have an IT department. We kind of all wear hats. Make sure those important people are included in this orientation process so they're prepared, your new hire's prepared, and you're overall prepared. Things to request: desk setup, software, hardware, email is added, and that they have a phone list. That's another important thing. A lot of the time we don't think of phone lists, so who they can contact. What they need to do, so they need to gather new paperwork. So this is for me, and I'm always prepared. I know that I have a new hire documents that I send out to everybody. Organize new hire lunch. That's another nice kind of factor. If you can't afford a lunch, and lunches do get very expensive when you have 7 guys going out for Chinese, but have a new hire lunch, or bring in muffins on day 1, or donuts. It really cracks the ice right there, where you're like, hey, we're all going to stand around and have a muffin and giggle and then go back to work. It just creates that anxiety and releases that anxiety for that new person. Schedule employee photos. Basically get them prepared on all levels in every department. Now, these are some extras that I absolutely love, and I've heard quite a few guest speakers in the past talk about them, and I utilize some of them. So number 1, get a welcome card. If you don't have all the bells and whistles and you can't provide them with company swag, because sometimes you can't give them all the company swag, like all these fun other companies that they portray. Yeah, we give out brand new laptops. I'm like, that's great. I can't afford a laptop. A welcome card goes a long way. Don't have a welcome card, print off a PowerPoint. I usually print off that beautiful image that they used for Windows 90 of the clouds, and I write welcome Bob. And I make everybody, I go around the office on Friday, and I get them all to sign it, and then I peg it on their clipboard. So when they walk in, they say, oh, wow, everybody signed this. Still to this day, I have 3 team members in our office over the last 2 years that have kept that on their pegboard. So I know it's a lasting impression for them. Other people tear it down because they're OCD and they can't have everything up there. Place balloons. This is something, I always have balloons when it's a birthday. I make sure if I have to go in on a Saturday for a Monday birthday that I'm decorating. Again, order breakfast for everybody, or get some muffins. Muffins are a low cost. Place icebreaker activities. So we used to have a foosball table in our office. We no longer have a foosball table in our office because people got very competitive and our table broke. But maybe you are lucky enough, and I've seen some awesome workplaces that they have ping pong, they have Game Boy. My other friend has a hockey game, PlayStation, oh my goodness. But create an icebreaker. Ask the person to take 10 minutes out of their day to go and have like maybe a foosball table game. Order company swag. So always on hand, and I'm lucky and I'm very fortunate, but try to have company swag, even if it's pens. I have t-shirts, I have high vis with our logos, I have USB with our logos, we have, you name it, we have swag, which is great, and I make sure that's on order and ready to go. Have your hiring manager and teammates text or email new hires. Load a USB stick with everything that they need, but only, obviously we're in a safety and confidential working area, but something that they can take back home. You'd be very surprised how welcoming it is that a person can take that information back home and review it later on at night. Sometimes we feel anxious to ask those questions to our boss for the 3rd time because we're not getting it. But it's nice to have that available that they can go home with it. Next, arrange for hiring managers to meet new hire. Book a Q&A with hiring executives or higher up execs. So if they want to go and talk to our general manager at Structural Trust and Formas Deal, you better believe they're walking into James's office and asking a question. We've created a very transparent and open office, and I make sure no matter what position that they're walked in our offices, in our truck shops, in our shop floors, they're seeing the full operations. Creates a very open ladder of trust. Lastly, have a hiring manager identify other responsibilities and roles, and find a coach and mentor. My only advice for you, so if you are the person who does the performance reviews, if you're the person determining that pay increase for that person, you are not a mentor. And it's very clear. If I have a person so say in the future, I have a human resource coordinator under me. I am not a mentor to them. And I have to be very clear because I decide their performance reviews. A mentor is somebody else within the organization, and we have to really get past that. We don't feel always comfortable talking to a person who determines our pay and performance reviews. We are mirror to what we say to them. So make sure that you're going out and finding that mentor that's different. So I have a younger high school student that started with us, and he's now on full time. I found another younger guy on our shop floor, and I made sure he came in on day 1, and they had a great relationship. Now they go for pizza. They hang out. I should not be the mentor. I'm the one who's having the pay performance reviews. So try to link those team members with an appropriate mentor. So next, we're at right now 10, 12. So I'm going to kind of zip through these generations very quickly. Now, this is, again, This is going to scare you. There are some very interesting generations coming into the workforce very fast. So we still have veterans at Forma Steel and Structural Trust, and I love them. They are awesome. They don't like flip phones even. They are great, but I have to work with them, and they are amazing, and all different quirks and attitudes. But I want to make sure that they work as well with the millennial group that's coming in, who would rather have 3 cell phones, an iPad, a laptop, and a screen in front of them. That's reality. Baby boomers, Generation X. So there are 4 generations that I'm going to quickly zip through. So here is our millennials. They look pretty happy, but guess what? They all have stuff in front of them, and that is some iPods and everything. It's very, very hard for me to, and I'm going through that tension right now within our own organizations where baby boomers are not getting along with millennials. And I don't know how many of you are experiencing that tension, but it is true, and we can work with it. So, for instance, I have a baby boomer at work who would rather read the newspaper and have a conversation at lunchtime. And I have a millennial who would rather scroll through Facebook and Instagram and not have a conversation at lunch. It's reality. But I can create different lasting relationships. So I'm going to give you some tips. Millennials, when you're creating an onboarding and orientation program, communication is hypercritical. Communicate, communicate, communicate. Millennials like to feel appreciated and valued. They need to know they are making a contribution. If they do something good, go tell them. That's my only advice for you. Millennials like to be told they're doing good. I am a millennial. I am the generation that likes, my boss goes, you just love constructive feedback. And I go, yeah, I do. Make sure you're giving that feedback to your team members who are in the millennial group. Add fun to your workplace and celebrate people's successes. If somebody does good, make sure you're verbalizing that out to everybody. Enjoy challenges, and they love taking on additional challenges. So once they've reached a certain area, challenge them with something out of their maybe job description. Things to consider, include your vision and your values during your orientation program with millennials. So our mission is to be involved in the community, to make a positive difference, and to create lasting relationships. I make sure that's in our orientation program so they understand that's our mission and values, and that they're now branded by that mission and value. Don't rely on snail mail. They don't like emails. I'll tell you right now, I can walk across the office instead of having an email with somebody, and millennial generations do enjoy them more one-on-one strategic meetings. That's more effective. Choose your language carefully when you want to inspire and persuade. Choose your language very strategically. Be sure to develop valid and reliable measures for performance. So next I'm going to go in. Baby boomers. I don't know why. If you search up baby boomers on Google, it's like I'm looking for Life Alert or something. They don't really give great photos, but baby boomers are amazing. And we have a lot of baby boomers within our organization. And so this is the multi-generation group that I'm dealing with right now. They prefer work structure, competitive, and face-to-face interaction. So you might notice some key factors between millennial groups and baby boomers. Face-to-face interaction. Eliminate the emails. If they don't need to be there, have more one-on-ones. So things to consider, foster the working mentorship relationship between coworkers. So if you have a brand new millennial, try to create a person in the group that's maybe been around the industry for 20 years. Create that relationship, more one-on-ones, and smaller effective team meetings. Don't drag it on. Don't have the competitive 7 people trying to talk amongst everybody. More one-on-ones. Next and lastly on Generation 2020. So by 2020, Generation Z, yes, Rose? Yeah, I'm going to get into these top 3 first. No, don't even worry. I'm just going to get into these top 3 at the moment because this is kind of the generations that we're dealing with and we're seeing the kind of friction right now. So Generation 2020, they are going to make up 20% of the workforce by 2020. And it is very interesting and it's very scary to know that they are snack media. So they respond to videos that are 6 seconds long rather than a minute long. Pretty interesting. They are activists and they're very community minded. They are very big on activism and design trends. So they respond to different designs on websites, on maybe it's your orientation program. So this is very interesting. They are a product and to these attitudes towards working hours. They actually expect to work more than 40 hours a work week. So be prepared for that. They want to work more than 40 hours a work week. They enjoy a fast-paced environment, but they will work on 5 or more screens at a time, and they will have that ability. How many times do you see a kid with an iPad, their mom's cell phone, and they're in Costco, and they're looking at 5 different things of technology to keep them quiet? That is Generation 2020 that we are dealing with. Expect their working hours, again, will be over 40 hours. So on average, they like snack media. So I highly encourage within your orientation programs to start thinking about smaller, more effective, bite-sized media. Don't include training videos that are an hour long. Maybe it's how to handle a hammer or a certain tool. you'll have that video. They respond better to smaller snack bite media. And so think Instagram and Snapchat when you're creating your orientation programs. And some people are going, oh my goodness. But start to think about those social media areas. So when we're looking for visually stimulating messages, we're going to think about images. We're going to think about the smaller videos when we're doing our orientation programs. We're going to zip through these items. So what other components make for a successful orientation? Just around the room, any kind of areas that are making for a successful orientation program currently? Yes, keeping up with everything. Yep. Other groups, is there anything that's making you very successful within your current orientation program that you'd like to share with the group? Everybody's going, I don't have a successful orientation program? Yes. Relate personal stories. Yeah. I was in your shoes as well, right? It's okay to feel anxious. It's okay if you don't know how to use a drill press. Having those conversations, right? So it's very interesting. Again, I'm not familiar with your construction side of things, but having the relatable conversations is very important. So we're noticing and we see, oh, you need to automate, you need to have this, but still create that personal relationship during your orientation programs. So I'm going to challenge you today for progress, not perfection. And we are zipping through things, so I'm going to go right through this. Identify 3 gaps within your current orientation programs and present these ideas at your next human resource and team meeting. Follow up in 30 days. If you are going out of this room today and you're going, we should do this, follow up in 30 days because people lose the momentum, right? So follow up with your actions and your current gaps. Next, I'm just going to quickly summarize our case study that I looked at. So in 2010, Psychometrics Canada, available on your USBs, they interviewed 368 Canadian human resource professionals across different designations, such as business, government, consulting, education, and not-for-profit. They were looking at engagement problems. They were finding out why disengaged team members were there, and they were seeing who was responsible for engaging with those disengaged team members. So when asked what leaders could do more to improve engagement, they were saying communicate clear expectations, listen to employees' opinions, and give recognition. Those were the top 3. Communicate clear expectations, listen to your employees' opinions, and give recognition. The driving engagement was the work environment and the processes, and it was very surprising. It's not how much they're making, it's the work environment. If they're not feeling welcome within their own onboarding process, they are out of there. So 69% of human resource professionals identified that onboarding is an ongoing issue within their current organization. So you're not alone. If you're thinking, sometimes I just wonder why it's not working, you're not alone. 96% of those respondents said that it was important and needed to be addressed immediately within their own organizations. So it's not being addressed. But the challenge with most of them is that they found that the disengaged employees do not have higher turnover, and they're not absent, and they're not walking in late. Instead, they're the ones that are staying within the organization and disrupting that work environment. Those are the disengaged team members. So they were actually finding that the age for disengagement peaked at the age of 40 to 49, and it was within both male and female. And after a review, they described the differences were the working relationships. The working relationships between people were the differences. So how many of us have this current problem where there's a person that's disengaged at work and they're causing disruption amongst the working environment? Yeah. So I like to use the term zombie. And when you're thinking about pop culture, they are a disengaged zombie. They follow the brains. They eat when they need to, but they're there just to walk around and find that person, right? So they are a zombie at structural trust and form of steel. That's the term, but we don't have zombies. We try to eliminate the zombies. We try to get them gone. But we do make sure we're holding the right people responsible to keep those people engaged. So those are the key stakeholders again, your managers, your production managers, whoever it may be. And these professionals answered that the people who were most important were the senior leaders. And it's not because they are coming down and they're laying down the whip and going, you have to work, but that they have better engagement opportunities to influence people. So you need to go back to your groups and you need to talk to your hiring managers and you need to talk and engage with those key stakeholders and tell them they're influencers in this onboarding process. So we're always concerned that when a person leaves, it's due to the salary and benefits. And this got a little lagged when I sent it back to get reworked. But across all age groups from 18 to plus 60, salary and benefits wasn't a leading indicator for disengagement, which a lot of the time we hear, if I don't get $1, I'm not going to be happy here. Well, guess what? They're not actually disengaged usually for salary and benefits. There's another underlying problem. The highest rated influences of engagement were the relationships with their coworker and the control over their work. So they didn't like feeling micromanaged. They didn't like the fact that a manager was behind them and telling them how to do their job and checking in every 2 minutes. They weren't allowed to just have control over their own work and utilize their skills. So what could leaders do more to improve employee engagement? And that is communicate clear expectations, listen to your employees' opinions, and give them control over how they do their work and opportunities to use their skills. So check in with your team members. If they have to do a task, tell them when you're going to check in with them, but don't micromanage. Avoid the micromanaging right over their ear and telling them, well, I could do it faster. I might as well just step in and do it faster. Let them know what they can do and their potential. That is huge within this group. So in front of you, we might not have time to actually do this, and I really don't want to cut into Landis's time. We do have a SMART worksheet, and if you're not familiar with the SMART worksheet tool, I also have quite a few friends that are all teachers, and I wanted to create something that I utilize within my own practice. And so when I'm having conversations and I'm engaging our team members, I always want to think of a SMART goal. So SMART stands for specific. If you need to bridge the gap, you want to have a specific task and it has to be measurable. So I need to know how to measure the efficiency levels, and maybe it's the man hours that we're going to need for a certain job. It has to be attainable. So if your team can't do it, it's not a SMART goal. And it has to be relevant to your industry, and you basically have to be relevant to what you're trying to do within your onboarding process. And lastly, timely. If you're setting out a goal and it's going to take you 8 years, guess what? You're probably going to have some turnover within that 8 years, and that SMART goal isn't attainable. So these are the action items that you want to take back to your team, lay out a SMART spreadsheet, and actually work through a goal. Because we can all sit around a boardroom table, we can all have meetings, but unless we're actually going over these action items, we don't have success. So a SMART action sheet is a great tool to bring back to your team, and I highly recommend it. So you're going to ask exactly what needs to be accomplished, who needs to be involved, how do I know I'm going to succeed, do I have or can I get the resources needed? Again, some of us are confined by our budget. Is it relevant? Is it worthwhile for me to go through this? Is it going to stress me out? Is it actually going to help me and in my role? And lastly, is it time bound? So what's the deadline for reaching my goal? So take this SMART sheet, and the premise of what I wanted to do today was have you work in your groups and go and identify one gap that's within your onboarding and orientation program, and then work through the SMART sheet and see if you can actually get through that gap. And you need to constantly go over SMART goals. And when I'm having conversations with our team members, I'm asking them to come with solution-based, focused in mind, which includes our SMART sheet. So take that back today to your team. And lastly, I'm going to wrap up in 5 minutes. Ongoing engagement. Are you ready for this speed round? It's going to be great. And I'm glad that I'm not going to show you this one clip that I had here, but The Office Space is a great movie. If you haven't watched it, I would highly recommend it. Peter Gibbons, he gets basically hypnotized, and he doesn't care at all. He comes in flip-flops and jeans. He doesn't care. He's being interviewed by 2 gentlemen who are coming to do massive layoffs, and it's called the Bob interview. He doesn't care, and he talks about how he sneaks in, he avoids his boss by going in the side door, and really, he, on average, only works about 15 minutes in the week. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I've had a disengaged team member like that in the past. So that was kind of the premise of the disengagement and what type of tools we can use. So most specifically, constructive feedback. We like you too. A lot of the time we're not giving the constructive feedback that we need to our teams. It's easier to maybe avoid that confrontation and not have those conversations. So things you can do today. Again, eliminate that standard meeting. If you have 10 people around your group, you need to go to your stakeholders in that company and say, is it really worth for that one person to be there who gets maybe 1 word in during a 3-hour meeting? Eliminate that. Create smaller team talks. So more innovative, fast one-on-ones. Provide constructive feedback. Accountability starts with you, and it really ends with you as well. So making sure that you're following up as well. Leave nothing to chance approach. And lastly, keep everyone informed. So I'm going to give you some quick starters based on criticism versus constructive feedback. So how many of us deliver constructive feedback to our teams? Would you say you're a good constructive feedback? Yeah, maybe. You're like, I try. Well, criticism is judgmental. It's vague, it's personal, and it's usually designed to negatively impact a person. That's when criticism is given. So you want to be giving constructive feedback that is concise, It focuses on a particular behavior. You're not sitting that person down and going, Bob, let's talk about the last 6 months. You want to be precise and you want to follow up. So I always recommend within the first 24 hours of a situation happening. You're going to focus as well. Never make it personal. Well, remember that day that you wore this? And well, that was the reason why that I'm talking about you. No, have the concise in its behavior or an issue, and always intend to help that another individual. So why constructive feedback? Well, it's honest, clear, you're setting those expectations, but think about forward thinking. Don't put your feelings at best. Always think about professionalism. It's important to understand that when we deliver constructive feedback, we always jump back into our professional jumpsuit. Make sure that you're trying to not only better them, but better your job and your entire team when you're giving constructive feedback. So some best practices when you're giving constructive feedback: have a neutral setting. If you are constantly providing feedback to a brand new team member within the first 6 months, avoid doing it in front of everyone. You're going to notice that feelings start to arise when you're doing that. Be concise as possible. Somebody took a 3-hour lunch and they were meant to only take a half an hour lunch. Should probably talk to them about that within that day. Be very concise and why that's wrong and why create a positive action. So listen, engage, and follow up with any questions they have. Whenever you deliver constructive feedback, always engage with the other party. It's really important. Half the time we get wound up in wanting to talk about things that we don't really engage. Lastly, things to avoid. Bad timing. Don't be the gas pedal reaction. I love saying gas pedal. When sometimes you're really raging and you're mad at a person for doing something that they shouldn't have, that's a gas pedal reaction. Avoid the gas pedal. Wait, calm yourself down, deliver what you're going to in a private setting to yourself, and then go and have that constructive feedback with that person. Open spaces. If you are providing something that's going to benefit the whole team, so say a person messed up on a certain situation, it could probably apply to another 3 people. So make sure if you're delivering that kind of feedback, that it's in an open space with everyone. If it's going to apply to everyone, but if it's only applying to one of your team members, in a neutral setting away from everyone else. Procrastination. Don't wait till the performance review. Don't wait. So many times that I've had that situation where emotions then come at bay and a person goes, why didn't they tell me that 3 months ago? So you're waiting to tell me on my performance review that I'm not doing well here. That really hurts people's feelings. It gets them really worked up, and you're going to see your turnover rate. So have the more constructive feedback. It's an amazing tool to deliver to your teams, but avoid during the reviews to bring up specific situations from months ago. And lastly, who, what, when. Who? Only those who need to be involved. Don't bring in Joe from accounting if he doesn't need to learn about something in sales. Just don't involve people that don't need to be there. Be concise. Open spaces, again, so what you want to deliver is concise, specific as possible feedback. And when? Right away. Don't avoid it. So many times I hear, oh, I just didn't have time to talk to him today. Okay, guess what? I'm setting it in your reminder and we're talking to them at 6 a.m. Come in early. We need to address it. You have to mentor your team to have that constructive feedback. When they lack and procrastinate, that's when emotions get involved. And we're trying to take the emotions out of creating effective onboarding and orientation programs. Lastly, leadership. It's hard to identify ourselves as leaders when we have to provide that constructive feedback and coach and mentor those supervisors and managers to do so. But when we give that constructive feedback, we're not only leading by example, but we're helping the organizations that we work for as a whole. And I really, really, really stress that you go back and you start telling people, how can we start providing constructive feedback? Guess what? I provide it start at the interview. And I was given this tool for myself, and I really recommend people use it. When you're in an interview and a person responds with something bad, at the end, tell them during the interview that they responded to a question that wasn't your liking. It'll not only help them professionally and they'll appreciate you giving them that feedback, but this has helped me. If they quiver and they are not ready to get that feedback, they're not going to respond well in your working environment. I highly recommend that. So start at your interviews. If a person responds, they say that they were violent in nature in behavior at another job. That's something that we usually look to avoid during an interview, but it happens. So I will tell that person at the end of the interview, you responded in a nature that isn't what we embody here at Structural Trust and Forma Steel. And unfortunately, that's the feedback that I have to give to you today. That was a mark on our interview bias, or our interview questionnaire that we would dock you marks on. And usually if that person responds with, I shouldn't have done that, I was nervous, and they look at a proactive approach, they'll probably respond to constructive feedback a lot better than the person who shuts down, doesn't know how to respond. Really start utilizing constructive feedback from start to finish of your onboarding process. It's really important. And lastly, I'm going to finish off with my quote again. Train people well enough so they can leave. Treat them well enough so they don't want to. Again, my boss reiterates all of this information, but train your team members so that they feel confident in their jobs, and then treat them well enough so they don't want to leave. And that's all I have for you today. Woohoo! And I'm all done.